And welcome everyone to today's Transportation Society talk from Engineers Ireland. Today we're very happy to have Niels Jenig from Ramboll to talk about the reintroduction of the light rail system in the city of Kiel in northern Germany. It should be very interesting. So we encourage you to add any comments or questions, add some questions in the Q&A section, and I might read some of them out during the talk if you have some. Otherwise, you can leave them till the end. So I'll hand over to Niels to tell us everything about Kiel and light rail.
Everything. This is
Within 30 or 40 minutes, whatever you can squeeze in.
what we can do in 40 minutes. Yes.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
start my waiter. I start sharing. Yeah. Then I try my best to introduce, by the way, my hometown where I have been growing up in Kiel. I'm from Ramboll, Germany. I am at the moment leading our German rail activities, but also being responsible for our international light rail work. And as we all know, in Ireland, there are upcoming schemes and opportunities, especially, I guess, the one for Cork has some similarities to this one. So I've tried to translate here everything into English, of course, from the Kiel case. For those who can read a little bit of German here, Kiel bewegt sich, Kiel is moving. So the change of mobility. And I will tell a little bit more about this. Yeah. Okay. Kiel had a tramway. Yeah. So it is not like many German systems in West Germany, especially. Yeah. They were partly closed, and Kiel was one of the last in West Germany that was closed in 1985. So quite late. There was only Wuppertal behind us, behind Kiel in 86. And the discussion about reintroduction was, of course, since, let's say, 20 years, since 2000, more or less, already ongoing. And of course, now with the climate change goals, the whole picture, the whole situation dramatically changed. This picture here is, and you will see this later again in a modern version, with shopping and so on, how it looks nowadays and how we could implement a tramway there again. Holtenauer Straße, it's probably before, this is 1900 or whatever, I guess 1905, 1905. So before any World War, any demolition of the houses, because Kiel was heavily destroyed in World War II. And Kiel had a larger system. I will come to this. Kiel is in North Germany on the Baltic Sea, a city of about 250,000 inhabitants, the capital of one of our Bundesländer states of Schleswig-Holstein. And it's a university city. Here you see more than 100 years of tramway or Stadtbahn were completed in 1985. The main station, it's an old postcard with a tramway in the forecourt area. When you look at a picture in our simulation later, it still looks like this, a little bit more modern, yeah, but in principle it is the same style. And you see on the bottom the old Duwag trams, which were all everywhere running in Germany, in this case with a beer advert from Holsten. This were the ones at the end who were operating in Kiel. And on the top right-hand corner, it is a turning loop in the university area. This was built in just maybe for 10 years in operation. Then when the closure came nearer, it was not operated again. And of course, not very sustainable to build such an infrastructure, which is not there anymore, by the way. Most of the infrastructure was really taken out in the streets. And it had an interesting gauge of 1,100 millimeter, which is anyway not compatible with normal or standard gauge, which we have nowadays. Yeah, so there are only a few cities who had this historically. It was Kiel, Lübeck, and Braunschweig. And Braunschweig still has this as the only one. I hope I'm correct. The ticket you see is the last trip, 4th of May 85, and it's really my own ticket when I was still at school in Kiel when we took this last trip. So a little bit of history. What is the problem? The problem nowadays, like in many cities, I guess, I'm not super familiar with all the Irish values, but the growth in car ownership in the city, the green dots are more or less cars per person, inhabitants, on the right side, PKW cars for each 1,000 inhabitant. It's really high. So even if we all live in a changing climate world, people like cars apparently. And when you look at the city, it's getting full and full of cars. It has an infrastructure, a road infrastructure, which was built, of course, after the Second World War, when Kiel was rebuilt, dedicated to cars. And this was also the reason why in the 70s, the tram infrastructure was seen old-fashioned and came heavily under pressure. It needed reinvestment. And there was a political decision at the end in 77 not to reinvest anymore and to say, yeah, a bus can do the same. We all know nowadays, 40, 50 years later, the bus will not do the same. But this was at this time, of course, the belief. Cars are, the city is full of cars. There's no parking area anymore. And the congestion stuff, is going on. So we need to have solutions. The buses couldn't carry this. They couldn't also not support the climate change goals to be climate neutral until 2045. And due to this, the tramway ideas came back. This is the main reason. You see it here. This is a visualization from the inner city part. You see on the top side the harbor area. Of course, Kiel is famous for building ships and also U-boats. And nowadays, this is really a super growing big business, also from the military area, being quite important in the nowadays. But the road congestion stuff, this went up and created more and more problems. We have still some areas in Kiel which are not very well linked to public transport, and the quality, the life quality is also the French attitude to increase and change with the transport system, the quality of life, the residential locations here, and to do an upgrade. So it's not only a transport system, it's by far more. You could also argue it's not really. The main focus is by integrating a new transport system, like with this tram, this is a change of the whole urban environment, and this is a main target, including, of course, funding. Kiel has a lot. It's one of the largest harbors, also for tourism, but also ferries, some to into the North Baltic Sea, quite important. And then at the end, the climate targets. And this was the main reason. When you see the interesting, but before I come to the climate target stuff again, the old network, and as I said, it started in 1880, whatever, and the largest networks in 35 here in green, 35 kilometer, more in the inner city area. Kiel was smaller. You see the water there. Everything has to go around, so-called die Förde. At the end, it's a little bottleneck. Whereas it was a more inner city tram style network. And in the 60s, in red, you can see already that it was after the war grown to the outside of the city, but still within the city boundaries. So we don't leave the city political area here. Going into the wider city urban area, Kiel was growing significantly after World War II, and the housing, building, and so on went outside of the city center. The new network, it's in black here, covers roughly from the network of the 1960s, 11.7 kilometers. So the old network routes were still partly, at least in the dense urban city areas, the new ones. because traffic flows and so on have not really substantially changed. This is quite interesting. And here is a fun fact in it, which is a very positive fun fact. When we went to the state for funding for the first application and made our business case, yeah, the state said, yeah, look at it. We presented also this map. This is not a new tramway. You reopen something. We looked a little bit at this guy and said, a reopening? Yeah, you had already the infrastructure in this and this roads. And for reopening, you can get up to 90% funding for the infrastructure, not only 75. Think about it. Okay, so we were not really, you never, if you get more money from the state for local funding, of course, you should never say no, but it was a serious opinion to get more funding into the city, because one of the bigger problems is to invest into a new system is a lot of money in the beginning, which the local financial, I will come to this at the end of my presentation, which they cannot afford. So without public funding from the state or the Bundesland, the city of Kiel couldn't realize such a system. But this nice offering to get a higher degree of funding, of course, we will for sure accept it and do everything we can. It's a reopening from the 80s or the 60s. An interesting view on it. Here you see the city council where we made the final presentation in November 22, and the nice little brochure and so on, where we presented our case between light rail. And now for a second, I will come to the alternative, which we had to look at between 20 and 22. There were in the political environment also people saying, come on, a tramway is too expensive, and there are a lot of construction sites in the city, and it will be not affordable, and it may not bring the benefit. So we can do it with modern buses. So electric buses. Kiel is relatively well famous, let's say, for pure electric bus system in Germany. So this works not too bad. On the other hand, of course, there are some good reasons why the model shift, the model split for this bus system cannot come into areas which we definitely need for a shift towards public transport, to move more people from car network or the roads to the public transport network. So this is not the answer, the bus network, if you electrify it or not. But there were people saying, take BRT, 25-meter long buses, run them, and this will do the same. And in a very large study, probably the largest ever in Germany, at least to my knowledge, we have been demonstrating in really a very deep level of detail that the BRT system is also expensive and will not do the same. And you have to run more often, as we have a 45-meter long tram or 25-meter long smaller bus, BRT, even catenary or battery, which will not carry the same amount of passengers and will need to run more often. You need an infrastructure and so on. So it was clearly the politicians in this picture, they understood this and they followed our recommendation, which you see here, to say, okay, the BRT system is not for free. It's not just a bus. It needs a lot of investment if you do it right. And then you don't get funding according to the German law, which is not good because you cannot afford it in principle as a city. And on the long term, it's not so sustainable as, of course, the capacity reserve on junction. You have to go by far more into the road network and take capacity away for a BRT, which runs more often and so on. So the tram is simply, from the long-term vision, the better solution. Even if at the beginning, maybe the investment is a little higher, or little is higher, and also construction sites and so on will, of course, have an effect on a certain point of time. At least the politicians were clever. They understood this and followed us and decided 17th of November 22 to reintroduce the tramway to Kiel. This was a great day and evening. And this here is the Holtenauer Straße, which we saw in the beginning, again, is not exactly the same area, a little bit more south, the entrance area, with our new tram, green tracks, of course, and integrated planning. You see here with bicycles and pedestrians and so on. So we also have produced, based on our drawings and plannings, a lot of these visualization and films, and I will show you in the second one, to convince the public. Because now I will tell a little bit more about the tramway system, what have we done and where are we, and what are really important success criteria. As this system in Germany, we have roughly, I think, 59 systems running in Germany, but the last 10 years, some tried to reopen and were not very successful, also due to political, let's say, pressure that, it was not possible really to push in a unite manner. This is the idea, which is a change for a city, but to have the long-term momentum and keep it, because if you have a change in the political, let's say, majority, the next one should not easily stop it, because otherwise you can never invest into a system over 10 years or 15 years. The French, you can learn a lot from the French there, I guess, as they were able to link this realization period always to the election period of the mayor, so 5-6 years, and then he can cut the band for the first line. Once this is built, often systems are accepted and can continue. So one very important thing we need to keep here, and this is stakeholder management for the public side, for main stakeholders, but also in the politicians, that they are well informed, they understand the benefits, and they follow that this is a long-term plan. Here you see the network, 4 lines, 36 kilometers with a stop, our new network. The dotted lines are possible extensions. One of the stuff was here, and you could enlarge the map a little bit, but in principle, there are areas from the city of Kiel who will not benefit in the beginning from the tram, and we will not build 36 kilometers in one. There is a first implementation phase, which is in black here from Bremerskamp, the existing university, the old turning loop, which I showed in the beginning, was here at Christian Albrechts Universität Audi Max. But this is a big extension of the university area nowadays. And then you go here to the, where I say, Ansgarkirche. This is the Holtenauer Straße, where we saw the postcard and the newer picture, the visualization. So it will run there to the inner city. Main station is here, Hauptbahnhof, around the Förde, and then to the east side, where you have all here the marine area and the whole U-boat building from ThyssenKrupp and so on. So an industrial area. It runs here to the end, where it was also the last end in 85 in Wellingdorf was here. So this is the first line. Here in the bottom is the depot. It's today's bus depot, which one of the bus depots, which we will convert to a tramway depot. And the dotted lines are possible extensions in order to also show or demonstrate to those areas which will not profit in day one. We will not forget them. So we try our best to do more. And so far, this worked. The public participation.
Sorry, Niels. Can I just ask one question there? If you go back to the map,
please.
Yeah, one question about the network you showed there. How much of that is the existing network that was from, say, 1985 or 1960? Essentially, how much can you reuse, or are there any, buildings or anything else that has been since built over old rail tracks that you now have to reclaim as part of this network?
Yeah. Okay. Fair question. So the old network was dismantled. There's only a little bit left, which is just for historic reasons. So we cannot use any old infrastructure anymore. But the old last line in 85 was running here from the Kiel Canal, Nordost on the top here, along the whole Holtenauer. to,
Mm.
let's say, Ansgarkirche, main station around to Wellingdorf. So you could say we completely rebuilt at least the last network which was operated on between 77 and 85.
Mm.
The majority of the other parts is new, where we had never a line. For example, from Andreas Geigstraße here to Mettenhof, this was never existing in this way, or the black part here to, where I say, University and Bremerskamp and into the other areas here. So this is new. I think from these are 36 kilometers, 11.5 were already existing in the past, roughly. And
Oh,
along these, there was not built anything which we have to dismantle now. So buildings or I don't know, some other construction. So the streets are still more or less available and free for us. Of course, there's a fundamental difference. The old system was running in the street. It was a tram, a classic street running tramway. We want a high degree of own right of way to have, and priority at junctions need to be fast. So the insertion into the urban environment is a complete different one. Yeah.
yeah. Okay. That's I think just thinking from the Irish context where historic either light or heavy rail lines have been closed for either 10 years or 100 years, and things have since been built over. So obviously the rail lines will be gone, but even just having the corridor availability, which is what you have here in the north-south direction, makes a big difference in terms of project delivery. So yeah, that was just one question I had there.
It's not easy to insert this, I guess, but it's available, I would say. Now I go in order to achieve all this. So we made a lot of, let's say, this is not a high-speed railway somewhere outside the city area. We will have effects on a lot of third parties. And depending on your point of view, depending if external stakeholders, what they want, this is quite different. Yeah? I would take forever if we talk about all this, but we really, from day one on early, worked with all of this. Kiel is, let's take, for example, cycling on the left side. Kiel is one of the top cycling cities. They really invest into cycle highways with a cool network, and they are always ranked in these German mapping very high, top 3, 4, even 2 in Germany. So, to be honest, we are in conflict a little bit with these cycling. They need space in the road. The top quality corridors need 4-meter width. Yeah. And of course, then we come and want an own right of way also with, I don't know, 7 meters, 7 meter 50. Suddenly there's no space for parking or road users anymore. And this needs a balanced approach. So we try to get people in who we don't want to work against cycling. Of course, we like it. And it's the most sustainable mode. Of course, if everybody would cycle, great. In reality, this is not the case. And the balanced approach between the available space for cycling and car and parking on the right side. This was a constant, let's say, debate with politicians, but also the neighborhood, the shops, stakeholders around the tramway. So we were early in this study, which normally is done later in German projects, in this dialogue, which costs a lot of time. You could say we as engineers, as planners, half of our time is communication and not planning and sitting in our office in front of a computer and making cool plans and utilities. This is a change. Kiel is famous in Germany for this, let's say, public participation. Yeah? And also management of water, flood environment, the question of flooding and climate change. Yeah, we try as much as we can green tracks, even if you need more effort to keep them green, of course. Maybe in Ireland you have enough rain. By the way, we have in Kiel normally also enough rain, so they might stay green. But of course, it's a change of the surfaces in order for climate change to be adapted, this kind of stuff. We tried everywhere. You have I don't know, the urban integration, urban realm quality, how to improve this. The tramway is an option to really invest. It cannot be funded surely only by this money from the state, because in Germany, the funding is often a little bit too much focused on the technical side. Whereas in France, they also invest into the whole urban space more, also with this public money. We don't have this. So we need to see how we do this, but it's really by demonstrating that this is the opportunity. With a tram, you can rebuild part of the city. People wake up. So if you demonstrate good showcases and show it, which we have done by our visualization and films and so on, and we made excursions with politicians, this is really a good case. So working on all these areas, we tried hard to do this, and this is so far quite successful. It's really worthwhile, this investment of time and money. What we have done is also, you see in this map, 11, the whole network of 36 kilometers divided in 11 areas. And then you see the little boundaries of Kiel is divided, don't ask me now, in 16 Stadtteile, so districts or whatever. And of course, they always have local politicians and elected little parliaments, or which we need to deal with and take into account. So we divided the network in order to replicate this political environment, and then always went locally in all these areas. You see on the right side some of the stuff we did, from route walks to workshops in schools or local workshops. We did also citywide workshops to take really them all on board. You can never, often the people who are anyway for the tram, they come to these events, and those who are against it may not show up, but you have to work hard and try it. Yeah? At least nobody could say that we have not been informing early. And what we also did, and this was a complete change when you compare this to other German system. We made plans, so similar what we probably will do in what has to be done. And let's take the Cork example. But the phase 2 in Germany, which is not exactly the same, but very near, like in Ireland, to the planning application, or you call it railway order. It's called Plangenehmigung in Germany. So the plans which we have developed are already quite advanced, but the usual, let's say, procedure is to discuss all them in the city with the departments and all responsible people, and then they are completely fixed, and then you go out and get comments. We have not done it. We have said, okay, we build a plan, we have an idea, it's not complete, it's not fixed. There might be issues with green stuff or with neighborhoods or whatever. We might not have all, we need to buy some land for it or whatever. We go out with it, that we called it 60% plan. And we told the public, here is your opportunity. We still have 3 variants. Give us your comments. We take them into account. It's not fixed. Don't worry. And this perfectly worked. And we saved an enormous amount of time in the project by doing this. The network of 36 kilometers with this public participation in the 11 areas, we got a lot of feedback. It took us 2 years. Many other systems take for 2 kilometers 2 years when they have an extension somewhere. So it was an enormous speed up of the planning, which worked perfectly. I have to say, we were very happy. These kind of visualization we often use, and as I said here a little bit, we created, and I show you on the next slide, this presentation. I think we will distribute. There are links in it where you can see all this. We used also out of our visualization. Let's see if it works. It's a film. I hope it starts now. Yeah. So it also can all move. So what we did, based on our planning, and the basis is really our detailed planning for this. Main station here to reduce car traffic by using a lot of these films and visualizations. This was convincing. People suddenly could see, oh, this is how it could look like. Yeah. But when you look at the catenary, this should be also the catenary. This was hard work to make this like this. Yeah. So the network development, now the logic behind it, the full network, 4 lines, yeah, which you see here, how this could develop. Eastern part of Kiel, one street running on a place or the main station again. The idea of the 15-minute city we try to push. Here you see pedestrian cycling and all this stuff. Yeah. Revitalization, the inner city area, which could be also greener with the tram and less car traffic. And some core areas of the network where we do also more in the urban integration work. Yeah. And when you look into the, not really difficult to see with the trees, this was the main station on the old postcard. Yeah. The garden, the old harbor area, the Holtenauer Straße, bicycling, and we always try to push green, green, green. Yeah. Regenwasser management, so rainwater management. So to push also the arguments, but it's not only a transportation system, it's by far more. Just have a look at it a little bit. Gastro. We made several of these films, which you can on the website kiel.de/Stadtbahn. You find all this, the links, and you find also a lot of documents. Let's see if it works. From us. So those of you who can read German are, of course, this is a little better. So they are in German, but all the planning from us is also public. So all our documents, reports, plans, whatever, it's all on there. So I think this was quite an important part of the success where we are now. Now I would come, let's see where I'm time-wise. Okay, a little bit. Some details about what we did already. This network will have a severe impact on the road network and the capacity. So what you see here is our network with all the junctions, the traffic light numbers, yeah, where we will, of course, try to get as high priority as much as we can. We know that's not possible everywhere, but we made a lot of local simulations in Visum. We had a citywide network model in Visum and made runtime simulations based on all this in detail. And the city has recognized, oh my God, we need to change more or less the whole traffic light environment. But it's also an option to modernize it and to bring it to a high level, including state funding. Is this a risk or is this a chance? Depends on the way how you look at it. But I think it is, at the end of the day, you need to do this early. Otherwise, this is a higher risk later. And the traffic in the city still needs to flow. That's because we like tramways, we cannot close all the streets. This is not possible. Car parking, I said it in the beginning. So there was an agreement that about 10% of parking lots or parking spaces in an area of 400 meters, left or right, the corridor may be lost. Let's call it like this. This was from one of the political parties, an agreement that they support this. So what we did is, of course, the calculation. We even did some countings. Around our tram, this is one of the areas to check all this area by area. In some areas, of course, it's more difficult than in others. But overall, we had, with the introduction, 8 to 9% losses, and partly we then proposed local compensations, what to do. And this worked also, that we got not people who say, I cannot park my car anymore, I don't like the tram. This we were able to mitigate, I would say, quite okay so far. Yeah? Speed, of course, we have a road network. What you see here is the maximum speed of the roads when we run. Even if we run in the street, of course, the tramway cannot be faster than the road speed. But even if you run on an own segregated way and left or right, you have your cars. Normally, the speed cannot be higher of the tram unless you are completely segregated with a where you can definitely see for car users, because this is a tram and they can run on faster, it can be faster. Otherwise, it's a safety issue that cars intend to be as fast as the tram. So we have to adapt to this. And we had a target, 18, 20 kilometers. In the beginning, it was a little higher, but we saw, oh, this is difficult, average speed. And this plays quite an important role as the speed comes, how fast can somebody move from A to B. This goes into the socioeconomic calculations and how people change from car to tramways. And the faster we are, the better it is for all this. On the other hand, we cannot close all the junctions just to get full priority. In the inner area, we have 4 lines. Each one has a 10-minute frequency. So there's every 2.5 minutes, in principle, a tram per direction. So some of the junctions are really, if you get full priority, I will not say you can close them for cars, but it's clearly reduced. And there's a balance which we try to find. The run times, I said 18 to 20 kilometers is our speed target. Here you see of the complete network, the 4 lines with the distance and the simulated, and again, dynamic open track model, Visum, Visum. So we, in early phase, a lot of effort to do this right. Average speed, and depending on the nature of the line, those who are more inner city, for example, line number 2, is clearly more on the slower side, but still 18 is okay-ish, I would say. 19. Line number 3 is the one who's leaning outside and can run on longer stretches, really with 70. You come to 22 kilometers an hour. But overall target, more or less 19 to 20 in average. This we want to achieve. And the business case is calculated on this. So for me, this is also for the future. The next phase until planning application, quite an important guideline, because it's easy to make compromises and to go away from it and to each risk to mitigate it and to make another curve. And just to add this a little bit, the French philosophy is like this. So they are not so fast, but well integrated. We try to keep at least this speed in order to have this robust business case and demonstrate always also with the next planning phases. We would try to keep it to have this runtime idea that we are still fast as we can, and fight for each and every junction to have priority. This we try to do. So these are the speeds. I think they are not so different in Cork, what I saw so far on the information which is available. This leads, with these speeds, of course, to an investment into a number of vehicles. We talk here about 265-meter wide vehicles. Those are the maximum capacity according to the German DO-Strab, the law which is allowed. 45-meter length we want to go, because then we have really a robust starting capacity. 10 minutes frequency, according to our demand modeling, was okay, 4 lines. And you see this leads to about 41 vehicles plus a reserve. So let's see how much at the end we will have. The first implementation phase has, I think, 16 or 17 vehicles. And then you have your turnaround times, an ideal timetable efficiency around, if we could achieve 85 in average, great. It's not always possible, but you can see here in average, I think it's quite good if you could reach such a timetable. And for this, of course, we need a stability of the timetable as in the best possible manner. And this is, of course, by own right of way, priority, and a little bit buffer. For example, on the main station in the timetable, we gave 1 minute extra for each line in order to manage if you are a little delayed, that you can still stay within your timetable and be on a certain, when the trams run behind each other, they should not run 1 minute and then 8 minutes nothing, that this could work on the long term. 2 more slides, I think, then I'm finished. Power, we need power. So it runs on 750 volt. We had these discussions, could you not run without any catenary? This is, from our point of view, not efficient, and to have battery cars of this weight, a tram fully loaded could be 80, 90 tons move with a battery such a weight. So at the end, it was okay. Also, we had no big criticism to have a classic catenary, different ways. But we'll come to this in a second. A little bit due to EMC reasons, we had 2 sensitive areas around the universities where we need to also have no catenary or maybe sectioning. What you see here is, in principle, the substations. We also try to do this early. It's not so easy to identify areas for substations. They are not so big, but of course you need a link to the local grid, which cannot be everywhere, and then to have a public space where you can build this. So you see here for 12.5 kilometers, these are how many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10, and then the one on the bottom for the depot at the moment. It maybe an average, you say, at every 2 kilometers, it's a little bit too much for first phase, but of course we need to think already phase 2 and 3 with this, where part of this network is operated by also the other lines, and then here they are more loaded and you need more power. What was interesting is the local grid. Kiel also plans land power lines for these big ships, and they need power. Our power is nothing against this. When a big cruise ship comes and wants for 5,000 people plug in a little bit of power. So it's a competition about power. You can say this in a city. You don't talk about electrification of the car traffic. We needed about, at the end, 60% of the line needs an own 10 kV cable parallel, which is a cost driver, but in order to be stable, this was the compromise. So we put this better in early into our cost calculation. I talked about EMC. We had 2 areas in the universities where we had a lot of sensitive equipment. They are not covered by the standard EMC EC rules. So around a 750 volt tramway, you have a field around the overhead catenary. Depending on the amount of traction energy you draw and the number of vehicles which operate in, you have simply fields, and they can disturb this sensitive equipment. We made a large assessment of this because the universities, we need them as positive stakeholders, and when the tram is a risk to their freedom of research. We had a system in Germany, in Heidelberg, which completely was failing due to this and could not be built. There are positive examples, but also negative. You find in Europe several others. Utrecht is famous, Lund, or also Copenhagen. They did all something, and we did it in the same manner. The stakeholder university was a very important one for us. So we had early conversations and listened, made a survey. You see all these little dots. These are installations or future installations. We took this on board and we figured out, oh my God, this is not so easy. So we have 2 areas without catenary. Let's see how it develops. But in order to have a good balanced approach with these stakeholders, that they are positive and they want the tram, we don't disturb them. This is a compromise we did, even if it's costly. At the end, again, you see this little graphic on the top, urban development. This is the main station. Some of the initial hand sketches we did, where not everything is completely fixed. Yeah, so this is easier to convince also people. All these dots on the card here were already in 2022 for the first phase. We did a larger assessment of the options and the possibility to upgrade the urban environment. And this, of course, created positive, let's say, support. People saw this and thought, okay, when we get the tram, I get also this and this. So in principle, it's an investment and nobody knows if we can afford all this, because it's not funded in the same manner. But it's the French idea of seeing more behind the tramway system. So we try to do this and hopefully we can continue. So at the end, 2 slides, cost. This is the first 12.5 kilometers. Maybe I need to make this clear. It's not the network. The cost for infrastructure, for the planning, we need to build a new depot. It's not so expensive because part of the depot infrastructure is in the infrastructure track and catenary. Yeah? The vehicles, you see in urban design measures. So we talk about, at the moment, a number total is 441, and then, which is about not a little bit below 40 million per kilometer, comparable to other international systems who had a complete new, we were completely new. But then it was a discussion, we will not build this now, we have 10 years to go. So opening is at the moment 2034-5, if we can make it. For the first 12.5 kilometers, there's inflation and risk. So the public number, which we then took, is 564, where also the parliament, the local parliament, had to decide about this, and they took this decision based on these numbers. So the target is now, it's for a German system, a relatively high number. Within the next years, to keep the planning in an area that we don't exceed this, or if we exceed it, not very high, that we don't get this usual criticism. Yeah, you start with a low number and then you go up to whatever. I think this could be possible, so let's try our best. Last slide. I was not able to translate all this, but this is the cost benefit for the first line and 1.4. So I told a little bit, we have demonstrated this for all the different phases. They were all positive. 1.47 means for each euro you invest, you get 1.47 on the procedures. It's a German, let's say, procedure of this cost benefit analysis, which we all have to follow. There's no flexibility big in it. You get 1.47 out of it, and it has to be clearly above 1, and also with a, let's say, a margin needs to be demonstrated. If the costs get higher, are you still fine? So this is all in here, and it's a very robust business case for the state to give us funding. The right side, by the way, was at this longer time the business case for the BRT. So we were able to demonstrate this, and also it's another reason why the costs should not go up too high, because then this will go down, because normally if you have more costs, you will not have more passengers. But all in all, I think what I wanted to say here is we need to see this together. You cannot build just the infrastructure. You cannot just say, okay, we do this for only the passengers and do each frequency what we ever want. It's all balanced, and we try to early, let's say, look at these different elements. I think this was my last slide. So you see again here the inner city area, how it could look like one day. First of all, thank you for listening, and I guess there might be more questions.
Yeah, thanks very much. Thanks very much.
A little bit more time. Here you see the links. I hope they work, and you find here a lot of documents which you can read also. But yeah, more feel free to ask.
I just would like to thank Niels once again for a really interesting presentation, and it'd be great to have you back again once that project progresses a bit more. Very much.
Okay.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Niels. Thanks, everyone. Bye.